Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the ancient texts to totally shatter that modern, harmless image of angels and uncover the truly cinematic, honestly terrifying reality of what they actually are. So let's just jump right in. For centuries, the way we've pictured the heavens has been heavily filtered through art, literature, and pop culture. But today, we're stripping all of that away. We're going straight back to the source material to see what the ancient scriptures actually described. So, what really comes to mind when you hear the word angel? Seriously, take a second. Do you picture a peaceful, glowing figure floating around in the clouds? Or, I don't know, maybe a tiny, chubby baby playing a harp? Look, it's perfectly fine if you do. That is exactly what greeting cards and Renaissance paintings have completely conditioned us to imagine. But as we're about to see, the truth is way more mysterious and far more overwhelming.
There's just this absolutely stark contrast between what we've been taught and what the texts actually say. On one hand, we've got our pop culture angels, right? Harmless, cute babies, soft white wings, little golden halos. But on the other hand, the biblical reality, we're talking powerful warriors, beings made of literal fire. Some are even covered entirely in eyes. This contrast brilliantly illustrates how that comforting greeting card myth completely masks the awe-inspiring and frankly, downright bizarre descriptions that we find in biblical reality.
All right, so let's establish exactly what we're talking about here. The word angel actually comes from the Greek word angelos, which simply means messenger. But notice the second part of that definition. These are powerful, spiritual beings created by God before humanity even existed. According to the source texts, these beings aren't just background decorations hanging out in the sky. They are active messengers, fierce guardians, and heavenly warriors who are constantly serving a divine purpose. They are built for action, not just aesthetics. To really wrap your head around their sheer, staggering strength, I want you to consider this number, 1. The ancient texts describe how just one single angel wiped out an entire Assyrian army of thousands of soldiers in a single night. Just one angel, thousands of soldiers, totally gone for mourning. That is not a harmless little creature with a halo. That is pure, overwhelming heavenly power.
And because of this overwhelming, frankly terrifying supernatural power, it makes perfect sense why an angel's very first words to terrified humans were almost always, "Do not be afraid." I mean, imagine you're standing alone at night, and suddenly the very atmosphere around you changes. A being filled with supernatural light appears out of nowhere, and its voice literally shakes the air. Of course you'd be terrified. Who wouldn't be?
Let's actually look at how everyday people reacted when this happened. When Mary was visited, the text says she was deeply troubled. When the shepherds saw them, filled with absolute fear. And this is my personal favorite example. Hardened, heavily armed Roman guards collapsed like dead men. They literally passed out from shock. This shows us that an angel's presence carried the heavy, earth-shaking glory and authority of heaven itself. Their mere appearance could literally short-circuit human strength.
Section 1. A Guide to Heavenly Beings.
Now, heaven actually operates on a strict hierarchy. These supernatural servants each have very distinct, awe-inspiring forms and highly specific cosmic duties. For instance, you've got the Archangel Michael acting as a chief warrior, Gabriel working as a profound messenger, and then you have the much stranger beings, the cherubim and the seraphim. It's a highly structured, operational, spiritual army.
Let's dive into the cherubim, exactly as they're described by the ancient prophet Ezekiel. These are terrifying guardians that move like lightning. Get this, they have 4 distinct faces on one head, a human, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. They have 4 wings, straight legs, and, okay, this is definitely the most unsettling part, bodies entirely covered in eyes, and they're flanked by these mysterious flaming wheels. Ezekiel believed he was witnessing the unfiltered glory of heaven itself, and it was completely beyond ordinary human imagination. Then we have the seraphim, whose name literally translates to the burning ones. The prophet Isaiah describes these heavenly beings as having 6 wings, and they are so profoundly powerful that they actually have to use those 6 wings to cover their faces and their feet in reverence before the Creator. The source text tells us that as they worship, the sheer volume and raw power of their voices physically shake the foundations of the temple, all while smoke fills the room. Unbelievable, right?
Section 2. Cosmic War and Rebellion.
Now, the texts also detail an ultimate cosmic clash, an invisible, ancient spiritual conflict. On one side, we have the Archangel Michael, the fierce warrior tasked with defending and leading heaven's armies against the darkness. But standing in stark contrast on the other side is Lucifer, a once glorious, unimaginably beautiful angel who became entirely consumed by his own arrogance. It's the ultimate story of light clashing against a rebellion from within.
The tragedy of Lucifer actually unfolds in 3 distinct steps. Step 1, he was created in perfect beauty and power. But then, step 2, he became consumed by pride. He actually desired God's throne and wanted worship all for himself. Which brings us to step 3. He is cast out of heaven to become Satan, the adversary. This sequence serves as a catastrophic warning about how pride destroyed one of heaven's absolute greatest beings and, according to the texts, unleashed fallen angels or demons into the world.
Now, while we're looking at these spiritual realities, we really need to take a second to debunk a massive modern myth. There's this comforting idea, heavily promoted by movies and folklore, that humans turn into angels after they die. But the biblical reality? It's entirely different. Humans and angels are completely separate creations, with completely different destinies. The text explicitly shows that humans never become angels, because humanity has its own unique, deeply valuable destiny in God's plan. So no, you don't earn your wings, you are an entirely different kind of creation.
Section 3. The ultimate divine purpose.
So, if these beings are so unimaginably powerful, so completely alien in their appearance, and honestly so terrifying, why do they interact with us at all? Well, to answer that, consider how angels participated in the life and mission of Jesus Christ. They were there at every major juncture. They announced his miraculous birth. They ministered to him when he was starving in the wilderness. They strengthened him in his absolute darkest hour in the Garden of Gethsemane. And they descended to roll away the stone and declare the resurrection at the empty tomb. Throughout the entire life of Jesus, from his birth to the moment the earth shook at his resurrection, these majestic beings were actively responding to the arrival of the Son of God.
But here is what you really, really need to remember. Angels are not the main point. In the book of Revelation, when the Apostle John was so overwhelmed at what he was seeing that he actually tried to worship an angel, the angel immediately stopped him and said, "Worship God." What you should really take away from this explainer is that these beings of fire, light, and staggering power ultimately exist to point beyond themselves. They're there to remind us of how small we are compared to the Creator. I want to leave you with this final, truly provocative thought from the source texts. The real question is not, what do angels look like? The real question is, who is God? I want you to think deeply about that. If the most terrifying, awe-inspiring beings in the universe, creatures who can wipe out whole armies in a single night, beings covered in burning fire, if they bow down and cover their faces in absolute reverence, what does that tell us about the sheer majesty and power of the one who sits on the throne? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and as always, keep seeking the truth behind the texts.